The rust-colored dust of Meridian swirled around Nora Vallen's boots as she knelt beside the half-excavated ruins. 6 weeks of digging in this remote valley had yielded little more than broken pottery and corroded metal fragments, until today. "Please be something significant," she whispered, brushing away centuries of sediment with her sonic brush. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the dig site, turning the ancient stone structures into jagged silhouettes against the amber sky. The expedition funding was running out, and the University of New Terra was growing impatient. Another failed expedition would end her career as an archaeologist specializing in pre-colonial artifacts. At 32, with her reputation already questioned after the controversial Procyon findings, she couldn't afford another setback. The brush revealed something that made her breath catch, a gleaming surface that shouldn't exist in ruins over 4,000 years old. No metal remained untarnished that long, especially not on a planet with Meridian's corrosive atmosphere. "Jace, get over here," she called to her assistant, who was cataloging findings at the portable lab station. "What is it?" Jace Merritt shuffled over, his lanky frame bent from too many hours hunched over specimens. His enthusiasm had faded weeks ago, replaced by the resigned determination of someone just wanting to complete an assignment. "Look at this." Nora pointed at the gleaming object. "Have you ever seen metal preserved like this in Meridian's conditions?" Jace frowned, adjusting his protective goggles. "That's impossible. The sulfur content in the atmosphere would have corroded anything metallic centuries ago." "Exactly." Nora resumed her careful excavation, revealing what appeared to be an ornate handle of some kind. As more of the object was exposed, her excitement grew. It wasn't just any artifact, it was a dagger, its blade inscribed with symbols unlike any she'd encountered in her 15 years of fieldwork. "We need to document this precisely," she said, reaching for her scanner. "This could change everything we know about pre-colonial metallurgy." The scanner hummed to life, projecting a holographic grid over the artifact. But as the analysis began, the dagger emitted a soft blue pulse of light that rippled across its surface. "What the?" Jace stumbled backward. "It's active." "That's not possible," Nora whispered, though the evidence glowed before her. Pre-colonial civilizations didn't have energy technology. At least, that was the accepted theory. Maybe it's reacting to the scanner frequency. She deactivated the device, but the dagger continued pulsing. Something about the rhythm seemed almost deliberate. Like a heartbeat. Nora reached out, ignoring Jace's warning to wait for proper containment protocols. "Nora, don't." Her fingers closed around the handle. Warmth spread through her palm, up her arm, and the pulsing light intensified. The dagger vibrated slightly, as if awakening from a long slumber. "It's responding to me," she said, her voice barely audible over the sudden rush of blood in her ears. Images flashed through her mind, stars seen from unfamiliar angles, buildings that defied gravity, faces of beings both humanoid and utterly alien. Then, as quickly as they'd appeared, the visions vanished, leaving her gasping. "Are you okay?" Jace had moved to her side, his face pale with concern. "Yes, I." Nora looked down at the dagger, now dormant in her grip. "It showed me something. Like memories, but not mine." Jace's expression shifted from concern to skepticism. "Maybe the heat's getting to you. We've been out here since dawn." "I know what I experienced," she insisted, carefully placing the dagger in her specimen case. "We need to run full spectral and energy analyses back at camp." As they packed up for the day, Nora couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. The barren landscape of Meridian's northern hemisphere offered few places to hide, yet the sensation persisted. "You feel it too?" Jace asked quietly as they loaded equipment onto their hover sled. So it wasn't just her imagination. "Since we found the dagger," she confirmed. They made their way back to the research camp in silence, both scanning the horizon for signs of movement. Unauthorized presence in the designated archaeological zone was strictly prohibited, but that didn't stop treasure hunters from trying their luck. Pre-colonial artifacts fetched astronomical prices on the black market. The camp came into view as they crested a ridge, 5 domed habitation units surrounding a central research facility, standard galactic survey issue. But something was wrong. The perimeter lights were dark, and there was no sign of the other 3 team members who should have been processing the day's findings. "Stay alert," Nora murmured, reaching for the pulse pistol strapped to her thigh, standard equipment for expeditions to remote planets. They approached cautiously, the hoversled humming quietly behind them. The main airlock stood open, a serious protocol violation, and equipment lay scattered around the entrance. "Prentice? Valeria? Damon?" Nora called out, her voice echoing in the empty compound. A groan came from behind the communications array. They rushed over to find Damon, the team's security officer, sprawled on the ground, a bruise darkening on his temple. "Raiders," he managed, trying to sit up. 6 of them. Came out of nowhere. "The others?" Jace asked, helping the man to a sitting position. "Locked in the storage unit. They were after something specific, kept asking about a key or blade. Damon's eyes widened as they fixed on Nora's specimen case. "Like what you're carrying." Nora's grip tightened on the case. "How could they know? We just found it hours ago." "Someone's been monitoring our communications," Jace suggested, already moving toward the storage unit to free their colleagues. A new voice cut through the tension. "Or someone's been watching your dig site for weeks." Nora spun around, pistol raised, to find a man standing in the doorway of the research facility. Tall and broad-shouldered, with skin the color of burnished copper and eyes so dark they seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. His clothing, a high-collared jacket over fitted survival gear, marked him as a local, but not a raider. Raiders didn't wear garments with intricate hand-stitching or carry themselves with such quiet confidence. "Who are you?" Nora demanded, not lowering her weapon. "Someone who can help you keep that artifact from falling into dangerous hands." He nodded toward her specimen case. "My name is Tarek Josie. I'm a guide specializing in Meridian's pre-colonial sites. How did you get past our perimeter sensors?" A smile touched his lips briefly. "The same way the raiders did. Your security is excellent against technology but useless against someone who knows this planet's natural electromagnetic disruption patterns." Before Nora could respond, Prentice and Valeria stumbled out of the storage unit, supported by Jace. The sight of their disheveled state, Valeria sporting a split lip, Prentice favoring his left leg, pushed the confrontation with the stranger aside. "They questioned us about today's findings," Valeria explained, accepting a water pouch from Nora. "They knew exactly what to ask for, a metal dagger with light properties. Said their employer would pay handsomely for information." Nora's gaze shifted back to Tarek, suspicion hardening her features. Convenient timing for a helpful guide to appear. Not convenience. Necessity. Tarek moved further into the facility, his movements fluid and purposeful. Those weren't ordinary raiders. They work for Helix Corporation, a private research conglomerate collecting pre-colonial technology. They've been systematically looting sites across 3 systems. "And we should trust you because?" Jace asked, crossing his arms. "Because I've been protecting Meridian's artifacts from them for 3 years. Tarek pulled back his sleeve to reveal a tattoo, an intricate spiral pattern that Nora immediately recognized as the mark of the Heritage Guardians, a somewhat controversial but respected organization dedicated to preserving archaeological treasures in their original contexts. Nora lowered her weapon slightly. "Why not introduce yourself properly when we arrived 6 weeks ago? Would you have welcomed a local telling you how to conduct your research?" Tarek raised an eyebrow. "Besides, I needed to be sure your intentions were scientific, not exploitative." A series of beeps from the perimeter alert system interrupted them. "They're coming back," Tarek said, moving to the viewport. "With reinforcements. How do they even know the artifact is still here?" Prentice asked. Tarek's expression darkened. Because it's awakened. Once active, its energy signature can be tracked. His eyes met Nora's. And it chose you as its bearer. Chose me? That's ridiculous. It's an artifact, not a sentient being, Nora protested, even as she recalled the strange connection she'd felt when touching the dagger. The ancients didn't make that distinction, Tarek said simply. We need to move. Now. There's a network of caves 10 kilometers south that will shield the artifact's signature. Nora hesitated, torn between skepticism and the urgent need to protect her discovery. Trust me, Tarek said softly, his dark eyes holding hers. Or risk losing something that could rewrite our understanding of the galaxy's history. The decision crystallized in her mind. Jace, get everyone on the emergency shuttle. Set course for the research station in Meridian City. What about you? Jace asked. Nora slipped the specimen case into her pack. I'm going with Tarek. The artifact needs proper study, not to be locked in some corporate vault. She turned to Tarek. But this doesn't mean I trust you. One suspicious move, and you'll find out how accurately I can use this pulse pistol. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. I wouldn't expect anything less from the famous Nora Valen. Now, shall we make our escape before those raiders turn this camp into our tomb? As the sun dipped below Meridian's jagged horizon, Nora followed Tarek into the gathering darkness, the ancient dagger pulsing faintly against her back, a rhythm that inexplicably matched the beating of her heart. Dawn broke over Meridian's twisted badlands, painting the sky in shades of violet and amber. Nora Valen leaned against the smooth wall of the cave, watching Tarek Josie check the perimeter for the 5th time in as many hours. They'd traveled through the night, following routes that didn't appear on any official maps, eventually reaching this network of caves hidden beneath a massive cliff overhang. Still clear, he reported, his voice low as he rejoined her. But we shouldn't linger. Helix's trackers are persistent. And good at their jobs, apparently, Nora observed, flexing her sore legs. How exactly did they know about the dagger before we even fully excavated it? Tarek settled beside her, close enough that she could detect a faint scent of desert sage and something unfamiliar, possibly a local spice. Helix has been studying fragmented records from the early colony ships. They've pieced together references to certain awakening objects left by the ancients. Objects like this? Nora opened her pack, removing the specimen case. Inside, the dagger lay dormant, its intricate metallic surface reflecting the dim light filtering through the cave entrance. Exactly like that, Tarek confirmed. The records call them echo stones, artifacts that contain memories and can form connections with compatible beings. Nora raised an eyebrow. Compatible beings? You're talking about this thing like it has a will of its own. I'm telling you what the records say. Tarek shrugged. Whether you believe it is up to you. But you can't deny it responded to your touch specifically. She couldn't argue with that observation. Even now, as her fingers hovered over the dagger, she felt a subtle pull, an invitation. When she finally touched it, the familiar warmth spread through her palm, and the blue light began to pulse softly. It's connecting with you again, Tarek said, his voice filled with wonder. What do you see? The images came clearer this time, a vast chamber with walls that seemed to shift between solid and transparent, revealing star patterns beyond. Figures moved through the space, humanoid but with subtle differences in proportion and movement. They were gathered around a central pedestal where multiple objects like her dagger were arranged in a circular pattern. They're using these artifacts for something, Nora whispered, her eyes unfocused as she navigated the vision. Some kind of ritual or, no, it's more like a technology demonstration. The artifacts are keys to something larger. The vision shifted, showing what appeared to be a star map, with certain systems highlighted by pulsing light. One of these stars flared brighter than the others, drawing her attention. Eridu, she gasped as the vision faded. They're showing me a system called Eridu. Tarek's expression changed from curiosity to shock. That's impossible. Eridu is a myth, a legendary world said to be the origin point of the ancients. It doesn't exist on any chart. Well, this dagger disagrees, Nora replied, finding herself oddly defensive of the artifact's message. And it's showing me coordinates. She pulled out her datapad and quickly sketched the star pattern she'd seen, marking the position of Eridu relative to known celestial bodies. Tarek leaned in to study her drawing, his shoulder brushing against hers. If this is accurate, he murmured, it places Eridu in the veiled sector, an area of space with unusual radiation patterns that have prevented detailed mapping. Convenient hiding place for a mythical world, Nora noted. A distant sound interrupted their discussion, the distinctive hum of anti-gravity engines. Tarek was on his feet instantly, gathering their supplies. Time to move, he said grimly. There's a tunnel system that leads deeper into the mountains. We can lose them there. Nora quickly packed the dagger and followed him into the darkness, activating her wrist light. The tunnels twisted and branched, forming a natural labyrinth that would have been impossible to navigate without Tarek's confident guidance. How do you know these passages so well? She asked as they descended deeper into the mountain. My mother was a geologist who specialized in Meridian's cave systems, he explained, pausing at an intersection to consult what appeared to be mental rather than physical landmarks. I spent my childhood exploring these tunnels while she worked. And your father? Something flickered across Tarek's face, an old pain, carefully contained. He was a xenoarchaeologist. Disappeared on an expedition to the Outer Rim when I was 11. His work with pre-colonial artifacts is what inspired me to join the Heritage Guardians. I'm sorry, Nora said quietly. Tarek's expression softened slightly. It was a long time ago. This way. The tunnel opened into a breathtaking underground chamber. Crystal formations jutted from the ceiling and floor, casting rainbow refractions from Nora's wrist light. A small underground stream cut through the center, its water so clear it was almost invisible. We can rest here, Tarek said, setting down his pack. The mineral content in these crystals will scatter any scanning technology Helix might be using. Nora sank gratefully onto a smooth rock beside the stream, removing her boots to dip her feet in the cool water. The relief was immediate, and she couldn't suppress a sigh of pleasure. First rule of field archaeology, she remarked, always take care of your feet. Tarek smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him, as he joined her by the water's edge. My father used to say the same thing. Something about his smile transformed his face, softening the hard lines and revealing a warmth she hadn't glimpsed before. Nora found herself wanting to see it again. Tell me about the Heritage Guardians, she said, accepting a protein bar he offered from his supplies. I know the basics, protecting archaeological sites from exploitation, but what drew you to them specifically? The Guardians believe that history belongs to everyone, not just those with enough credits to buy it, Tarek explained, his passion evident in his voice. We've watched corporations like Helix strip planets of their cultural heritage, using ancient technology to develop weapons or luxuries for the elite. But the university also removes artifacts from their original locations, Nora pointed out. For study and public education, Tarek countered. Not for profit or power. There's a difference. Before she could respond, the dagger in her pack began to pulse with light, stronger than before, its glow visible even through the fabric. Nora quickly retrieved it, and as soon as her fingers touched the handle, a new vision overwhelmed her. This time, she saw two figures standing before a massive gate inscribed with symbols similar to those on the dagger. One figure, tall, with features remarkably similar to Tarek's, raised a dagger identical to hers. The second figure, smaller, with a presence that somehow reminded Nora of herself, raised a matching artifact. As they brought the daggers together, the gate began to open, revealing a blinding light beyond. The vision ended abruptly, leaving Nora gasping. What did you see? Tarek asked, his hand on her shoulder to steady her. Two people, opening some kind of gate using artifacts like this one, she explained, still trying to process the implications. And one of them looked like you. Tarek's expression grew serious. The legends speak of guardians, pairs of individuals who could activate the ancients' technology through some kind of resonance between them. Are you suggesting we're some kind of chosen duo? Nora couldn't keep the skepticism from her voice. I'm suggesting that these artifacts don't activate randomly, he replied carefully. There's always a pattern, a purpose. The intimate moment was shattered by a distant echo, voices and footsteps, still far away but definitely within the tunnel system. That's impossible, Tarek whispered. They shouldn't have been able to track us here. Nora's mind raced, then settled on an unpleasant realization. She yanked up her sleeve and examined her expedition suit's integrated systems. There, nestled among the environmental controls, was a tiny blinking light that shouldn't have been there. They tagged me, she growled, using her knife to pry out the tracking device. Probably when they raided the camp. She crushed it under her boot, but the damage was done. We need to move, Tarek said urgently, already gathering their supplies. There's another exit on the far side, leads to a plateau where we might find transportation. They hurried through the crystal chamber, following the stream until it disappeared into a narrow crevice. The passage beyond grew tighter, forcing them to proceed single file. What exactly does Helix want with these artifacts? Nora asked as they navigated the cramped space. Power, Tarek answered simply. The ancients had technology that could manipulate space, time, even consciousness itself. Imagine what a corporation would do with that capability. The tunnel suddenly widened, opening onto a ledge overlooking a vast canyon. The late afternoon sun bathed the landscape in golden light, revealing a tapestry of red rock formations stretching to the horizon. Beautiful, Nora breathed, momentarily forgetting their pursuers. Yes, Tarek agreed, though when she glanced over, she found him looking at her rather than the view. Heat rose to her cheeks, and she quickly turned away. What's the plan now? See that settlement in the distance? He pointed to a cluster of structures nestled in the canyon floor. Free Trader Outpost. Not the most reputable place, but they have spacecraft. And they'll just give us one because we ask nicely? Nora raised an eyebrow. Tarek's smile returned, this time with a mischievous edge. No, but I have something they want more than credits, information about unregistered mining deposits in the northern range. They began their descent, following a path that seemed barely more than a game trail. As they navigated the treacherous terrain, Tarek reached back to offer his hand during particularly steep sections. Each time their fingers touched, Nora felt a strange resonance, almost like the connection she experienced with the dagger but warmer, more personal. Halfway down, they paused to rest in the shadow of an overhanging cliff. The settlement was closer now, the details of its haphazard construction visible, a collection of repurposed shipping containers and prefab shelters surrounded by a makeshift wall. How far behind do you think Helix is? Nora asked, scanning the path they'd traveled. Not far enough, Tarek replied grimly. Once we reach the outpost, we'll need to move quickly. These free traders don't ask questions, but they also don't take sides in conflicts. They won't protect us from Helix. Then we'd better not need protection, Nora said, checking her pulse pistol's charge. As if on cue, the distinctive whine of a scout drone echoed through the canyon. They pressed themselves against the cliff face as the small device zipped overhead, its sensors sweeping the terrain. That's not a standard commercial model, Tarek whispered. Military grade, heavily modified. Helix has resources, Nora noted. We're outmatched in equipment and numbers. But not in knowledge or determination, Tarek countered, his hand finding hers in the shadows. And now we have a destination, Eridu. The warmth of his touch sent an unexpected thrill through her body. Despite the danger, despite her lingering suspicions about his convenient appearance in her life, she couldn't deny the connection forming between them. Why are you really helping me, Tarek? She asked softly. The Guardian's mission explains protecting the artifact, but not the risks you're taking personally. He held her gaze, something vulnerable flickering in his dark eyes. My father's last transmission before he disappeared mentioned finding an echo stone that showed him visions of a hidden world. He called it Eridu. His fingers tightened around hers. When I heard about your expedition uncovering a pre-colonial site in this region, I hoped. You think there's a connection to your father, Nora finished for him. He nodded. And now that the dagger has shown you Eridu's location, I'm certain of it. The drone made another pass, closer this time. They held perfectly still until it moved on, continuing its programmed search pattern. We need to reach the outpost before nightfall, Tarek said, returning to practicalities. The free traders locked down after dark. They continued their descent, moving more cautiously now. As they approached the canyon floor, the dagger began pulsing again, its rhythm increasing as if responding to some external stimulus. It's getting stronger, Nora observed. But I'm not having visions this time. Maybe it's reacting to proximity, Tarek suggested. The legends say some sites contain amplifiers for the Echostone's powers. They reached the canyon floor and began the final approach to the settlement. The main gate stood open, with a few traders and travelers milling about the entrance. Before they could reach it, the dagger's pulsing suddenly intensified, and Nora stopped in her tracks. Tarek, she whispered urgently. Look there. She nodded toward a figure standing by the gate, a woman in nondescript clothing that didn't quite conceal the corporate insignia on her sleeve. Helix. They've cut us off, Tarek muttered, pulling Nora behind a large boulder. They must have agents in every settlement within range. So what do we do now? Tarek studied the settlement, his expression calculating. There, he said finally, pointing to a secondary entrance, little more than a gap in the wall where repairs were underway. It's a risk, but we might slip through unnoticed during shift change. As they waited for the right moment, Nora found herself studying Tarek's profile, the strong line of his jaw, the tiny scar above his left eyebrow, the way his eyes constantly assessed their surroundings. In just 24 hours, this stranger had become someone she was beginning to trust, perhaps even care for. Ready? He asked, breaking into her thoughts. Nora nodded, gripping the dagger securely in its case. Lead the way. They moved swiftly across the open ground as workers began exchanging places at the repair site. Blending with the small crowd, they slipped through the gap and into the chaotic interior of the settlement. Narrow alleys wound between structures of varying heights and states of repair. The air was thick with the sense of cooking food, mechanical lubricants, and too many bodies in too little space. Perfect for disappearing. There's a trader named Vexen who owes me a favor, Tarek explained as they navigated the maze-like pathways. He has a small jump-capable shuttle. Will it get us to the veiled sector? If the coordinates you saw are accurate, yes. As they turned a corner, they nearly collided with a Helix operative, the same woman they'd spotted at the gate. For one frozen moment, recognition dawned in her eyes. Run! Tarek shouted, grabbing Nora's hand. They sprinted through the settlement, dodging startled residents and appending market stalls in their wake. Behind them, the operative was speaking urgently into a communicator, summoning reinforcements. This way. Tarek pulled her down a side alley, then through a series of increasingly narrow passages. They emerged onto a small landing pad where a compact shuttle sat, its hull weathered but intact. A lanky man with cybernetic eyes was loading cargo, cursing colorfully as they appeared. Vexen, Tarek gasped. We need transport. Now. The man's mechanical eyes whirred as they focused on the new arrivals. Josie. You've got terrible timing. I'm not scheduled for departure until. Change of plans, Tarek interrupted, reaching into his pocket to produce a data chip. Those mineral surveys I promised, plus a bonus, coordinates to the veiled sector that actually work. Vexen's expression shifted from annoyance to intense interest. The veiled sector. That's suicide. The radiation. Can be navigated with the right approach vectors, Nora interjected. Which we have. Shouts and running footsteps grew closer. Vexen glanced toward the sound, then back at them. Trouble follows you, Josie, he observed dryly. As usual. He snatched the data chip. Get aboard. And if we die in the veiled sector, I'm haunting you in whatever afterlife exists. They scrambled into the shuttle just as Helix operatives poured onto the landing pad. Vexen sealed the hatch and threw himself into the pilot seat, his augmented fingers dancing across the controls. The shuttle lifted off with a protesting whine, scraping against the settlement's perimeter wall as it clawed its way skyward. Weapons fire followed them, a few shots glancing off the shield before they accelerated beyond range. In the cramped passenger compartment, Nora found herself pressed against Tarek, their bodies swaying together with the shuttle's erratic movements. His arm encircled her waist, ostensibly to steady her, but neither of them moved to break the contact once the flight smoothed out. Looks like we're partners in this adventure now, she said softly. Tarek's eyes met hers, filled with a mixture of determination and something deeper, something that made her pulse quicken. Partners, he agreed, his voice equally soft. To Eridu. The dagger pulsed between them, its blue light illuminating their faces as Meridian fell away beneath them and the stars beckoned with ancient secrets and newfound possibilities. The shuttle trembled as it pushed through the swirling nebula that marked the edge of the veiled sector. From the co-pilot's seat, Nora watched ribbons of blue and violet energy dance across the viewscreen, occasionally flaring bright enough to make her shield her eyes. Your coordinates better be worth this, archaeologist, Vexen grumbled, his cyborg eyes continuously adjusting to the fluctuating light conditions. We've lost sensor capabilities twice already, and the radiation is playing havoc with the navigation system. They're worth it, Nora replied with more confidence than she felt. The dagger, secured in its case beside her, had been pulsing with increasing intensity since they entered the sector, almost as if eager to return home. Tarek leaned forward from his seat behind them. How much farther? According to what's left of my navigational system, Vexen said dryly, we're approaching a gravimetric anomaly that shouldn't exist. Either your coordinates lead to a black hole that will crush us into quantum particles, or... The nebula suddenly parted like a curtain, revealing a sight that struck them all silent. A planet hung in the void before them, not the harsh, uninhabitable rock they'd expected, but a world of breathtaking beauty. Vast oceans of deep turquoise stretched between landmasses covered in vegetation that shimmered with an almost luminescent quality. White clouds swirled in complex patterns across its surface, occasionally parting to reveal mountain ranges and what appeared to be the geometric outlines of structures. Eridu, Tarek whispered, his voice filled with wonder. It's real. Impossible, Vexen muttered, his cybernetic eyes whirring frantically as they processed the data. This planet doesn't register on any standard scanning frequency. If I weren't looking at it with my organic eye right now, the ship's systems would say there's nothing here but empty space. Nora's hands trembled slightly as she opened the specimen case. The dagger inside was now glowing steadily, its light synchronized with a subtle pulse she could feel emanating from the planet itself. It's been hiding, she said softly. Or someone's been hiding it. As they approached the planet's atmosphere, the shuttle's communication system suddenly activated, though no one had touched the controls. A melodious voice filled the cabin, speaking in a language none of them recognized yet somehow understood at the most fundamental level. Bearers of the Cordis Key, you are welcome to Iona. Iona? Nora looked to Tarek in confusion. Not Eridu. Iona is the true name, the voice continued, as if hearing her question. Eridu is what the first human visitors called this world, an echo of their own ancient myths. Follow the guidance beacon to the Threshold City. A soft chime sounded from the navigation console as coordinates appeared on the screen. Well, Vexen said after a moment of stunned silence, I suppose we'll do as the mysterious voice says, since we've come this far. The descent through Iona's atmosphere was smoother than expected, the shuttle gliding through cloud layers that parted as if deliberately making way for them. Below, the landscape unfolded in breathtaking detail, forests of silver-leaf trees, winding rivers that seemed to glow from within, and finally, the city. Threshold City defied conventional architecture. Spires of crystalline material rose from a central plaza, connected by delicate bridges that looked too fragile to support weight yet clearly functioned as thoroughfares. The entire city appeared to be built in harmony with the natural landscape, structures flowing around and through living trees and rock formations rather than displacing them. The shuttle landed on a circular platform that hovered several meters above the ground, connected to the main city by a single bridge. As the engines powered down, Vexen turned to his passengers. "I'm staying with my ship," he announced firmly. "No offense to your mysterious voice, but I've smuggled enough contraband to know when something feels like a trap." "Fair enough," Tarek agreed. "We'll return once we've found what we came for." Nora secured the dagger in a holster at her hip, where it continued to pulse steadily. As they disembarked, the air that greeted them was unlike anything she'd expected, sweet and clean, with undertones of unfamiliar spices and flowers. The gravity felt slightly lighter than Meridian's, giving each step a subtle buoyancy. "It's beautiful," she breathed, taking in the impossible architecture and lush vegetation. "But where are the inhabitants?" As if in answer, a figure emerged from the far end of the bridge connecting their landing platform to the city. Tall and willowy, with skin that shimmered faintly like mother of pearl, the being approached with a fluid grace that made it appear to float rather than walk. Its features were humanoid but with subtle differences, eyes slightly larger, set in a face with no discernible age, framed by hair that moved as if underwater despite the still air. "Welcome, bearers," the being said, its voice matching the one they'd heard in the shuttle. "I am Saray, keeper of Threshold." Or rather, Nora decided based on the feminine quality of the voice, made a gesture that somehow conveyed both greeting and honor. "We have awaited your arrival for many cycles." "You were expecting us?" Tarek asked, his hand unconsciously moving to rest near his own weapon. Saraya's expression remained serene. "The Cordis key awakens only when the time is right and the proper bearers appear. You are here, therefore, you were expected." "The Cordis key," Nora repeated, her hand moving to the dagger at her hip. "Is that what this is?" "It is one half of the key," Saray corrected. "Two halves, two bearers, this is the way it has always been." Tarek and Nora exchanged glances, the implications settling between them like an invisible thread drawing them closer. "You said you've been waiting," Nora pressed. "For how long?" "By your measurement, approximately 4,000 of your years," Saray replied casually, as if discussing the weather. "Since the last joining failed and the veil was strengthened to protect Iona from those who would exploit its knowledge." 4,000, Nora began, but Tarek interrupted with an urgency in his voice. "Have there been others who came seeking this place? Perhaps a man who resembles me, about 20 years ago?" Something flickered across Saraya's otherworldly features, recognition, perhaps mixed with sadness. "The one you speak of came to our world. He carried ancient maps but not the key. Without it, he could not complete the journey." "What happened to him?" Tarek's voice held a carefully controlled tension. Saray gestured toward the city. "Come. There is much to explain, and time, while abundant, is not infinite." They followed Saray across the bridge, entering the impossible city that seemed to exist in perfect balance between technology and nature. As they walked, Nora noticed other inhabitants, beings similar to Saray, going about activities she couldn't quite comprehend. Some appeared to be cultivating the living architecture, their hands passing through solid surfaces as if they were liquid. Others gathered in small groups around floating orbs of light, communicating in a mixture of spoken language and graceful gestures. "What are they?" she whispered to Tarek. "Not what," Saray corrected gently, her hearing apparently far more acute than Nora had assumed. "Who?" "We are the I, the original inhabitants of this world and custodians of the knowledge left by those you call the Ancients." "You're not the Ancients?" Tarek asked, surprise evident in his voice. "We are their descendants, evolved over millennia," Saray explained. "The Ancients traveled beyond the stars, seeding many worlds with life and knowledge. They created the keys as bridges between worlds and species, knowing that someday the right bearers would reunite what was separated. They reached a circular plaza at the city's center, where a massive tree grew, its bark translucent enough to reveal flowing energy within, like luminescent sap. At its base stood a pedestal with two indentations shaped exactly like the dagger at Nora's hip. "This is the heart of Iona," Saray said reverently. "The connection point between our world and the greater consciousness of the Ancients' network. It is here that the joining must take place." "Joining?" Nora asked, a mix of scientific curiosity and apprehension flooding her. "The merging of two minds, two souls, two worlds," Saray replied. "The keys are catalysts, but the true power comes from the connection between the bearers." Tarek stepped closer to the pedestal, studying the indentations. "You said my father came here without a key. What happened to him?" Saraya's luminescent eyes dimmed slightly. "He attempted the joining without a complete key. His courage was admirable, but the attempt nearly destroyed him. We preserved his consciousness within the heart until proper bearers could complete the joining and release all those trapped between states of being. He's alive." Tarek's voice cracked with emotion. "My father is alive. His consciousness survives," Saray corrected gently. "Whether he can be restored to physical form depends on the successful completion of the joining." Nora moved to Tarek's side, instinctively reaching for his hand. "What exactly does this joining entail?" "The placement of the keys, followed by a mental and spiritual connection between the bearers," Saray explained. "Your minds will temporarily merge with the collective consciousness stored within the heart, including those trapped between states." "And the risks?" Nora pressed, squeezing Tarek's hand. "If the connection between bearers is not strong enough, you could become trapped as well," Saray admitted. "The joining requires absolute trust, absolute honesty between partners." Tarek turned to face Nora fully, his dark eyes intense with emotion. "I came here seeking my father, but I won't ask you to risk yourself for my quest." "You didn't ask," Nora replied softly. "I chose to come." Something had been building between them since they met, a connection that transcended their brief acquaintance, as if they'd known each other across lifetimes. A disturbance at the edge of the plaza interrupted the moment. Several Ioni approached rapidly, their movements lacking the usual fluid grace, instead conveying urgent purpose. "Keeper Saray," one called out, "vessels have breached the veil. They bear weapons and technology designed to disrupt the heart." "Helix," Nora breathed. "They must have followed us somehow." "The activation of the key created a temporary weakening in the veil," Saray explained grimly. "Those with the right technology could have detected it and followed your trajectory." "Then we need to complete the joining now," Tarek said decisively. "Before they can interfere." Saray nodded. "Prepare yourselves. Once begun, the process cannot be interrupted without catastrophic consequences for all involved." Nora felt fear flutter in her chest, but alongside it was a certainty she couldn't explain. "I'm ready," she said, removing the dagger from its holster. Tarek took her free hand, his grip warm and steady. "Before we do this, I need to tell you something." His voice dropped to a near whisper. "In the short time I've known you, I've felt a connection I can't explain. It's more than the keys, more than this quest. I think I was meant to find you." The naked emotion in his voice made her heart skip. "I feel it too," she admitted. "Like I've known you far longer than a few days." His eyes searched hers, and then, with gentle deliberation, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was brief but charged with meaning, a promise, a declaration, a beginning. When they parted, Nora felt a new clarity, as if the final piece of a puzzle had clicked into place. "Let's do this," she said. They approached the pedestal together. As they positioned themselves on opposite sides, Nora noticed the dagger was now glowing so brightly it was difficult to look at directly. "Now," Saray instructed, "place the key in the receptacle and open your minds to each other. Let no barriers remain." Nora held the dagger over the indentation, looking across at Tarek. "Together?" He nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. "Together." They placed the dagger into the pedestal simultaneously. Immediately, the tree at the center of the plaza blazed with light, its internal energy surging upward through the trunk and branches. The ground beneath them hummed with power, and the air itself seemed to thicken, becoming almost tangible. Then the connection began. Nora gasped as her consciousness expanded beyond the boundaries of her body. She could feel Tarek's presence merging with hers, his memories, hopes, fears, and desires becoming as familiar as her own. She saw his childhood on Meridian, felt his grief when his father disappeared, experienced his years of searching and the moment of wonder when he first heard about her expedition. In turn, she shared her life with him, her passion for archaeology born from a childhood fascination with her grandmother's stories, her struggles in academia, her loneliness despite being surrounded by colleagues, and the instant connection she'd felt upon meeting him. Beyond their personal memories, other consciousness began to join the meld, ancient beings whose thoughts moved in patterns so complex they were barely comprehensible, and more recent additions, including a presence that felt remarkably like Tarek. "Father," she heard Tarek's thought, unfiltered by speech. "Son," came the response, filled with pride and love. "You found the key, as I knew you would." The connection deepened, revealing the true purpose of the heart of Iona, not just a repository of knowledge, but a nexus point connecting hundreds of worlds seeded by the ancients. Through it, civilizations separated by vast distances could share wisdom and maintain balance in the galaxy. This is what Helix wants to control, Nora realized. With this power, they could dominate all connected worlds. As if summoned by her thoughts, a discordant note entered the harmony of the collective consciousness, foreign minds attempting to infiltrate the connection, their intentions sharp with greed and ambition. "They're trying to hack the heart," Tarek's consciousness warned. "We need to complete the joining now." Through their merged awareness, Nora understood what needed to be done. The joining wasn't just about connecting their minds temporarily, it was about becoming permanent guardians of the heart, their bond serving as a living firewall against unauthorized access. "Are you sure?" she asked silently. "This is forever." His response enveloped her like an embrace. "I've never been more certain of anything." Together, they directed their shared consciousness deeper into the heart, strengthening its defenses while simultaneously opening controlled pathways to worthy minds across the galaxy. The trapped consciousnesses, including Tarek's father, were integrated into the network, freed from their limbo. As the joining reached its culmination, Nora felt herself returning to her physical body, though the connection with Tarek remained, a warm, constant presence in the back of her mind. The light from the great tree dimmed to a sustainable glow, and the humming in the ground subsided to a gentle vibration. They opened their eyes simultaneously to find Saray watching them with profound respect. "It is done," she said simply. "The joining is complete, and the heart is secured. You are now guardians of Iona." Nora felt different, both herself and more. Knowledge that would have taken lifetimes to accumulate now rested comfortably in her mind, accessible but not overwhelming. And there was Tarek, both physically before her and intimately present within her consciousness. "The invaders?" Tarek asked, though Nora suspected he already knew the answer. "Their technology has been neutralized," Saray confirmed. "Their vessels hover powerless at the edge of our atmosphere. They will be returned beyond the veil with no memory of finding this place." A new presence approached, an eye with features that bore a striking resemblance to Tarek. Though his form was now similar to the other Ionai, something in his movements and the way he carried himself was unmistakably human. "Father," Tarek whispered, moving forward hesitantly. The transformed being smiled. "My son. You have succeeded where I failed." "I didn't know if you were really alive," Tarek said, his voice thick with emotion. "More than alive," his father replied. "Evolved. The consciousness integration has given me a new form and purpose." He turned to Nora with knowing eyes. "And you have found a partner worthy of the guardian bond. What happens now?" Nora asked, still processing the enormity of what they had experienced. "Now," Saray said, "you begin your true work. As guardians, you will serve as bridges between Iona and the worlds beyond the veil. You will identify other potential guardians, guide them to keys of their own, and expand the network of protection around knowledge that could destroy as easily as create. And us? Tarek asked, taking Nora's hand. What does the joining mean for us specifically? Your lives are now intertwined in ways few beings experience, Tarek's father explained. Your bond will allow you to communicate across any distance, to share strength when one falters, and to know a depth of connection most can only imagine. Nora looked at Tarek, seeing him with both her physical eyes and the deeper awareness they now shared. In his mind, she found absolute acceptance, profound respect, and a love that had somehow transcended their brief acquaintance to become something timeless. I can think of worse fates, she said softly, squeezing his hand. His smile was radiant. Much worse, he agreed, pulling her close. As they stood together in the heart of Iona, Nora realized that her search for ancient artifacts had led her to something far more valuable, a connection that spanned both heart and mind, past and future, earth and stars. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them not just together, but as something more than simply the sum of their parts. The dagger that had brought them together now rested in the pedestal, its purpose fulfilled. But the path it had revealed was just beginning. Ready for our next adventure, Guardian? Tarek asked, his lips brushing against her temple. Nora smiled, feeling the universe of possibilities unfolding before them. Born ready.